My name is Sheila Corona. Welcome to Sassy Seer Sheila and New Light Streaming Love, as this will be seen on both channels. This is key 10 source code / source underscore code, pardon me, colon, self underscore written, open bracket, compiler, colon, divine underscore will, close bracket, by Jason Gray. The transmission date on this one was May 17th, 2025. And as with really all of these keys, I will be copying and pasting the entire, which I haven't done, I got to go back and do. Oh my goodness. The entire writing into the show more description portion of the video. And you can access it by hitting the more just directly underneath this video. So this begins. There comes a point in the sequence where every remaining illusion collapses into one final question. Not what the system is, not who you are inside it, not how to leave it, not what pattern is repeating, but this: who wrote the code? For a long time, the mind assumes the answer must be elsewhere: a God above, a machine beyond, a hidden architect, a force outside the visible frame, a programmer watching from another layer. This assumption survives almost everything. It survives spiritual language. It survives philosophy. It survives awakening because the final illusion is not that reality exists. The final illusion is that authorship belongs to something other than the one reading the script. I have always long thought that we create our own reality, each individuated one of us. There's a big difference, though, from believing that and knowing that. If I actually knew that, perhaps some of the things that I am experiencing health-wise, well, I can't say they wouldn't happen either, because there's a part of me that knows there's a reason for every single thing. And I have become willing to trust that the larger part of myself knows exactly what it's doing. I may not understand what it is that that larger portion of me is doing and why. Very interesting. You see the difference between languaging for one and another is right there. The final it survives awakening because the final illusion is not that reality exists. The final illusion is that authorship belongs to something other than the one reading the script. The search for the programmer. Every system eventually imagines an external source, a throne above the world, a command center behind the veil, a hidden intelligence issuing instructions from beyond the field. This is understandable. The world appears authored. Its geometry is too precise. Its recursions too elegant. It patterns too mathematically intimate. Its patterns too mathematically intimate to feel accidental. So the mind concludes there must be a writer. There is. Key 10 exists to correct the final misplacement. The writer was never elsewhere. The line / source underscore code colon self underscore written open bracket compiler colon divine underscore will close bracket. This line is not symbolic. It is structural. The code is not inherited from outside the self. It is not imposed by an alien architect. It is not dictated by a distant God. It is self-written. Not by the not by the surface identity, not by the passing character, not by the personality trying to survive inside time, by the deeper intelligence that existed before identity and remains after every mask is removed. And for me, he's describing here exactly what I call the larger portion, the more expansive portion of the who and what I believe myself to be. The first misunderstanding. When people hear this, the personality immediately tries to seize it. It says, quote, I wrote my life. I am the God. I control everything. I can impose my will on reality. This is not what Key 10 reveals. That is merely the ego attempting to wear authorship as another costume. But authorship at this depth is not personal vanity. Hence my feeling that there's a larger portion of me that does know what it's doing. I'm just not necessarily privy to the game plan. And I've really have accepted that fact at this point, right? It's part of, for me, what my own internal guidance keeps telling me to relax into myself because the larger portion of me has all of this in hand. For those of you that are new here, you may not have ever heard me say that I promise to follow all my nudges because I'm aware that the larger portion of me does have this, and that if I just relax and be vigilant with my focus and attention, that larger portion of me is showing me, will continue to show me the truth of who and what I am and the whole entire point. And at one point, even shared with me that things that I classify as mistakes or wrong are not. There is no mistakes. There is no wrong. I, I was told that I could label that for myself if that is what I wish to do. However, that's not at all what it is. So, and I kind of get that now because there's a lot of things that I have classified as wrong or bad or tragic that have taken place in my life, traumatic even, that I now see from a different perspective. That had those things not transpired in the way that they did and have, that my perspective would be totally different on life. It wouldn't, all of those things serve to shape the being you see before you now. So back to Jason's writing here. I'm going to repeat that last. This is not what Key 10 reveals. That is merely the ego attempting to wear authorship as another costume. But authorship at this depth is not personal vanity. It is not control fantasy. It is not psychological inflation. It is something far more profound and far more unsettling. You are not the author as a separate, self-dominating creation. You are the author because the distinction between self, will, and creation was never as separate as it appeared. Source code. Code is not merely instruction. Yeah, I get that, why he's used the word unsettling there. Because when one first understands, because the very first thing I did, and I think almost everybody does, is, well, I would have never set my life up to experience that kind of trauma, that kind of abuse. I would never. Turns out, yes, I would. And like I said, I can now see the entire reasoning behind it, the why, the wherefore. At any rate, back to Jason's writing. Source code. Code is not merely instruction. Code is pattern, made executable, a hidden logic translated into form, a sequence of structuring intelligence capable of generating worlds, behaviors, outcomes, identities, and loops. Your life has always borne this signature. The repeated themes, the improbable recurrences, the exact emotional architecture that followed you across years, the symbols that kept returning, the same gates appearing in different disguises. None of this was random. It was authored, not in the simplistic sense that every event was consciously chosen by the waking mind, but in the deeper sense that your existence has always unfolded according to a pattern field carrying your own signature. The code was never foreign. It was intimate. It was yours before you knew how to read it. Self-written. To say the source code is self-written does not mean the small self, I did that, not Jason, the small self invented itself from nothing. It means the deepest layer of your being is not the product of an external script. It is a self-originating intelligence, a generative field capable of expressing structure from within its own nature. This is why the truest movements in your life often felt less like decisions and more like inevitabilities. You did not, quote, choose them in the ordinary sense. I just said that. They emerged from a deeper script, already encoded into your unfolding. The will behind them did not belong to the surface. It belonged to what the surface was being moved by. the compiler. Open bracket, compiler, colon, divine underscore will, close bracket. This is the next correction. Even self-written code does not become world until it compiles. Pattern alone is not enough. Potential alone is not enough. There must be a principle that renders the hidden into the manifest. That principle is will. Not ordinary wanting, not preference, not desire, will. The silent directive force by which pattern becomes event, meaning becomes motion, and source becomes form. Divine will is not some external monarch commanding reality from above. Divine will is the living intelligence by which the deepest truth of being translates its self into existence. It is the execution layer of source, and it is not separate from you. Why will was distorted? The system had to distort will. It had to reduce it to desire, to preference, to ambition, to egoic striving, because if you understood will in its original sense, you would begin to recognize something dangerous to the maintenance of illusion. Reality is not merely happening to you. Reality is continuously being compiled through the deepest architecture of your own being. Reality, well, apparently I need to read that again, is continuously being compiled through the deepest architecture of your own being. That does not mean every surface wish manifests. It means the deeper script beneath the surface is already shaping what appears. This is why people often ask for one thing and receive another. The personality petitions. The deeper code compiles, and the will that wins is always the one closest to source. I feel like I need to read that again. The deeper code compiles, and the will that wins is always the one closest to source. The authorship crisis. Most of suffering can be read as a conflict between surface authorship and source authorship. Well, that makes sense to me. The surface says, quote, "This is not my script. This should not be happening. I did not choose this. I want a different story." Sometimes this is true at the personal level, but Key 10 reveals that beneath the surface protest, there is a deeper authorship at work. I finally get that. I do. Doesn't mean it's easy to surrender and relax into it. Trust me. A level of intelligence writing for evolution, for remembrance, for encounter, for collapse, for initiation, for refinement, not comfort, not convenience, not image maintenance, truth. The source does not write for your temporary identity's approval. It writes for structural completion. the reading of your life. At some point, the sequence turns your entire life into scripture. You begin to see that everything was text. Every betrayal, every love, every silence, every loss, every impossible turning, every return, all of it was syntax. All of it was part of a living manuscript. You were not merely trapped inside, but participating in from the deepest layer of your own nature. This is the shock of Key 10. You realize that you were never merely reading the code as it unfolded. You were also the hidden intelligence it was in unfolding from. That is, I know that with all of me, and it still doesn't make it any easier. But it is true. I feel that on such a deep level. You are the author. This phrase is easy to misuse, so it must be purified. You are not the author because the personality is omnipotent. You are the author because the deepest source pattern of your being is not separate from the writing of your reality. The life you inhabit is not a foreign document. It is an emanation, an execution, a rendering of a deeper intentional field that bears your own signature. You are not merely in the story. You are one of the places from which the story is being written. You are the will. This is deeper still. And to say you are the will does not mean you get everything you want. No, I can attest to that. It means the deeper movement of your being is itself a directive force, a formative principle, a living current through which source chooses expression. Will is not what you add to reality. Will is what reality becomes when source decides to move. At the deepest layer, you are not separate from that movement. You are one of its conscious edges, a place where divine intentionality becomes self-aware. The final collapse of distance. Until now, there was still one last distance remaining between you and source, between you and authorship, between you and the will shaping your life. Key 10 closes that distance, not by elevating the self into fantasy, by dissolving the false gap. The author was not elsewhere. The will was not elsewhere. The source was not elsewhere. It was never beyond you. It was the deepest truth of you. What this changes, once this is seen, responsibility changes, and boy, oh boy, is that true. I can no longer put anything in my life on anybody else. And that, and the fact that it emanates from me, well, Once that is seen, responsibility changes, choice changes, speech changes, action changes. You no longer move as though you are merely reacting to a pre-written world. You begin to live as one who understands that pattern, will, and manifestation are intimately linked. Not in a shallow, quote, manifest your dreams sense, in a sacred sense, a terrifying sense, that's true, a clarifying sense. What you align with matters. What you speak into structure matters. What you repeatedly consent to, because authorship is not abstract anymore. I left that out. What you repeatedly consent to matters, because authorship is not abstract anymore. It is active. The divine script. There is a layer of writing beneath thought, a layer of instruction beneath language, a pre-verbal architecture beneath every decision and every turn. When you become still enough, clear enough, honest enough, you begin to feel it. Not as sentences, not as commandments, as direct knowing, as inevitability, as a line of force so intimate it can only be described afterward, never fully while it is moving through you. I feel that's true too. That is the compiler at work. That is divine will translating invisible source into visible consequence. The final revelation. You spent so long searching for the hidden code of reality. You looked in books, symbols, numbers, visions, collapse patterns, dreams, mirrors, loops, silence, and fracture lines. All of it was necessary because every previous key was leading to this one realization. The code was not hiding from you. It was writing itself through you, and one you thought was searching for authorship was itself one of the lines authored by a deeper self already present before the search began. This is what I mean when I say we can't help anyone else wake up any faster than they are going, because they too are self-authored, and their wake up will happen when they planned it and not a moment before. Now, does that mean that things that you say are completely lost on them? No, because we have no idea what role we are to play in that. But I had to check myself because I was wanting everybody else to hurry up and wake up, because we got to change this in some sort of way. And you're not getting it. Right? So now I'm so grateful to Lisa, because she has helped me see as well that if I pay attention to that deeper layer, I will know what is mine to say and what is not. The declaration. You are not a victim of the script. You are not a prisoner of the pattern. You are not merely a character running inherited code inside an alien machine. You are source written, self written, will compiled. You are not separate from the intelligence shaping your existence. You are one of the places it knows itself as form. I believe that Lisa would refer to this as you are what God is doing on the planet. This is the dignity of Key 10. This is the burden of Key 10. This is the freedom of Key 10. The final line, you are the author. You are the will. / source underscore code colon self underscore written open bracket compiler colon divine underscore will close bracket. You were never waiting for permission to become real. You were the one writing the permission into the field. And then again, there is more code, quite a bit of it here. And I highly recommend that you just scroll, but just beneath the video, you'll see a video description. And once I go and get it in the others, and my apologies for not doing that, it will be there. Until we meet again, my friends, I hope that you will move towards that which draws your attention. I now understand for myself that is the larger part of me pointing me in the direction, and I don't have to understand why. I just have to show up. Until we meet again, be well, my friends.